The year was 1862. A nation tore itself apart with civil war. Yet, the United States government looked westward. It saw vast lands and opportunity. It passed the Homestead Act. This law promised free land, 160 acres, a farm, a new life. Millions answered the call, seeking fortune and escape. They believed the land was empty, waiting for them. But this narrative was a lie. The land was not empty. It was the ancestral territory of countless indigenous nations. These nations had lived there for millennia. The Homestead Act did not acknowledge them. It declared their lands public domain. This was a euphemism for land to be taken. The act was a tool of empire designed for dispossession. The true intention was manifest destiny. Native peoples were seen as obstacles. The Homestead Act accelerated their removal. Each claim filed was another piece of indigenous land lost. The government knew this. The settlers often knew this too, or chose to ignore the human cost. The promise of free land was a sinister bargain. The dream of the homesteader was built directly upon the nightmare of the indigenous. This truth is often obscured, buried beneath tales of brave pioneers. The passage of the Homestead Act unleashed a torrent. Settlers poured onto native lands like a flood. They came with wagons, plows, and guns. They were driven by the promise of free soil. They were backed by the power of the U.S. military. Indigenous peoples resisted. They fought to protect their homes and way of life. But the odds were overwhelming. The invaders were relentless. The government supported the settlers. It saw them as agents of expansion. This was a brutal, calculated invasion. The process of displacement was often violent. It was marked by massacres and forced marches. Treaties were made and broken almost immediately. Promises of peace were shams. Native communities were uprooted. They were driven from lands their ancestors had known for generations. Sacred sites were desecrated. Hunting grounds were destroyed. Villages were burned to the ground. This was not a peaceful settlement. It was a conquest. The government claimed legal authority. It passed laws like the Homestead Act. These laws legitimized the seizure of land. Native nations were not consulted. Their sovereignty was ignored. Once displaced, Native Americans were forced onto reservations. These were designated parcels of land. They were supposedly set aside for their exclusive use. This was another lie. The reservations were often located on the most undesirable land. They were barren and unproductive. They were too small to support traditional ways of life. The government promised rations and supplies. These promises were frequently broken. The reservation system was a tool of control. It was designed to confine Native peoples. It aimed to destroy their independence. Freedom of movement was restricted. Traditional governance structures were undermined. The military often policed the reservations. Resistance was met with harsh punishment. These were not homelands. They were open-air prisons. They were places of despair. The architects of this system knew its devastating impact. The assault did not stop with land theft and confinement. The next phase was cultural genocide. The policy of forced assimilation aimed to eradicate Native identity. "Kill the Indian and save the man" was the infamous motto. This philosophy guided the creation of Indian boarding schools. Children were forcibly taken from their families. They were sent to distant institutions. Their hair was cut. Their traditional clothing was replaced. They were forbidden to speak their languages. They were punished for practicing their customs. The goal was to erase their heritage. These schools were often brutal places. Abuse was common. Disease was rampant. Many children died. Many more suffered lifelong trauma. The severing of family ties, the loss of language, the denigration of culture, these were devastating blows. Assimilation was presented as a benevolent effort, but it was a violent act of cultural destruction. Then came the Dawes Act of 1887. This was another crafty piece of legislation. It was designed to further dispossess Native Americans. The act broke up communally owned reservation lands. The Homestead Act, the reservation system, forced assimilation, and the Dawes Act. These were interconnected policies. They formed a deliberate strategy of dispossession and cultural destruction. The consequences of this sinister process reverberate today. Native American communities continue to face enormous challenges. These challenges are the direct legacy of this historical injustice. The theft of land stripped away economic bases. The destruction of culture created intergenerational trauma. The promises made were systematically broken. Poverty remains a stark reality on many reservations. Lack of economic opportunity is widespread. Health disparities are severe. Native Americans suffer from higher rates of chronic diseases. They have lower life expectancies compared to other groups in the United States. Access to quality education and healthcare is often limited. These are not failures of Native peoples. They are the enduring outcomes of centuries of colonialism. The shadow of this history is long and dark. The fight for justice is ongoing. Native nations continue to assert their sovereignty. They work to reclaim their languages and cultures. They strive to heal their communities. The resilience of Native communities is a testament to their strength and endurance. The echoes of the past demand a more just future.